Cassidy, a member of the United States Senate, join us. Senator Cassidy served in the U.S. House of Representatives. He's a medical doctor, and he served now in the United States Senate. He serves on multiple committees, the Finance Committee, Health Committee, Energy, Joint Committee on Economics, Veterans. Is a broad realm of interest and capabilities. My experience with him is he can take information and bring it together and summarize it, and he has a clear understanding of particularly trade-based money laundering in this region and the impact that it has globally. So Senator Cassidy, thank you for making the trip down here from the United States, and your time is precious, but it's a recognition of these individuals and how they've come from throughout the world and the many thousands who are watching this forum globally who have tuned in for it today. So thank you, sir. We look forward to your remarks.
Hola. Soy Senador.
Hello, I am Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana in the United States. Thank you very much for this invitation to speak with all of you. I hope that we have a very positive discussion about trade-based money laundering. Now, I will be speaking in English. As you can tell, I don't speak Spanish very well.
In human trafficking, others in narco trafficking or counterfeit goods, or some other aspect of the threat network. What each criminal activity has in common is the need to launder so-called dirty money into the legal financial sector. Now that need to money launder is a vulnerability where the criminal activity can be disrupted. In the remainder of my remarks, I will focus on drug trafficking as a use case, if you will, as to how to address money laundering, but solutions can apply to multiple aspects of the threat network. Let's set the stage. 50 to 60,000 Americans die annually from drug overdose. Transnational criminal organizations which provide the drugs transfer their profits out of the United States to Mexico, countries in Central and South America, from which the money again may be transferred to Africa, Asia, or the Middle East. This is often through trade-based money laundering, in which illicit profits are transferred between countries, piggybacking or mixed in with legitimate trade. A simple example of how trade-based money laundering can work is as follows. A criminal organization wants to move $2 million from the United States to Colombia. The criminals buy and ship $2 million worth of goods from the United States to Colombia, but they only charge Colombia $1 million. The importer sells the goods for más o menos $2 million. By this means, the transnational criminal organization transfers $1 million out of the United States. The logical question is, how can this occur? Speaking only from the U.S. perspective, in my country, the Customs Agency handles the bill of lading or the manifest. The Treasury Department, to the degree that any federal agency sees it, handles the invoice. So here is the manifest, and here is the invoice. The two never meet. There is no connection established between these two key parts of the transaction. Because they never connect, it creates the possibility of phantom invoicing, under or over invoicing, duplicate invoicing, etc. So to combat, we need to think how to link the information in this trade transaction in a way which is transparent and in which the governing authorities will be able to detect if money is being laundered. By the way, it's important to note that by undervaluing goods and hiding profits, governments lose tax revenue which could be used to support social services like education and health care are to invest in infrastructure. The lack of investment in these entities leads to poor conditions in the country, which in turn discourages foreign direct investment. So the criminal activity not only directly impoverishes the country, it sets up a vicious cycle in which the country remains more impoverished because of other reasons as well. Now, trade-based money laundering, not paying taxes, manufacturing and distributing drugs are, of course, illegal. So criminal cartels bribe officials, law enforcement, border agents, and generally corrupt society. And as we see in Mexico and elsewhere, murder rates and societal violence can dramatically increase. So we're here as part of the effort to address this. Now, there isn't just one thing to do. In the United States, we work to help people off their addiction, to interrupt the flow of drugs. Latin American countries work to stop the production and transit of drugs. But as we know, as the evidence is apparent, these efforts have limited effectiveness. We must also interrupt the financing of drugs, and I would argue that may be the most effective way. I say that because as hard as our countries have tried, if somebody wants illegal drugs, they can find it. And even when there's a successful intervention against producing illegal drugs, the drugs are found from another source. But wherever the drugs are shipped from, and no matter how many potential users there are, if the trade cannot be financed, the trade does not happen. So the point of vulnerability of the financing and of the money laundering aspect is where we can make a difference. Now, drug cartels and terrorist organizations have been extremely resourceful. As much as $100 billion moves through the US financial system every year. I was told last night that 100 billion euros are laundered in Germany alone annually in the EU. There also is, as other speakers have spoken, a convergence between criminal and terrorist organizations. So, for example, Hezbollah has been active in the drug trade in the United States. And Hezbollah uses trade-based money laundering to move money and goods from the US through South America, West Africa, into Europe, back to the Middle East to finance terrorism around the world. So this is a national security issue for the United States, but it is a national security issue for every country, including your country, whichever country is yours. This conference is about building a better international response, and I thank Congressman Pittenger for this effort, and I'm glad to be part of it. Now, we know that attacking the financing of transnational criminal organizations can work. Reforms have made it harder for illicit organizations to move money through the formal banking system. When Mexico strengthened its banking regulations in 2010, restricting how many US dollars could be deposited in Mexican banks, bulk cash smuggling decreased. What has also worked is enforcing beneficial ownership laws and enacting and enforcing asset forfeiture laws. But by the way, I also want to point out, trade-based money laundering damages a country's economy in more than one way. Recall the example I used of Colombia, in which Colombia misses out on the revenue from tariff, but the importer also needs to get rid of $2 million in merchandise pretty quickly. The importer commonly sells the goods at a discount to more quickly convert into cash. This further reduces value-added tax revenues for the government, and selling goods at below market value puts legitimate businesses at competitive disadvantage. So let's think about that transaction. The goods leave the United States, they arrive in Colombia, but the invoice may go through Panama. Now, although customs agencies and other government officials are involved, so are private companies and individuals. This makes following the goods very difficult and therefore non-transparent and therefore subject to corruption. So one country can work to address the issue, but if all three countries in this example, the public and the private sector, are working together in a transparent, easily traceable process, success is more likely. So we need solutions and best practices which can be simultaneously employed and used by North, Central, and South America. One such solution is a public distributed ledger using blockchain technology. Blockchain is increasingly being seen as a promising and effective tool for facilitating international trade and countering illicit activity. Now, blockchain's appeal is that the technology provides a secure, immutable, traceable, and decentralized ledger which is more valid for the 21st century trading system. Now, the U.S. Customs has tested the use of blockchain and distributed ledger technology in trade in 2 different pilot projects with excellent results. The real-time exchange of data lowered cost and improved efficiency for the private and public sectors. The Inter-American Development Bank is currently sponsoring KEYNOTE, a public-private partnership in which Chile, Colombia, Mexico, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Ecuador, and Bolivia are working together with their technical, public, and private sectors on a distributed ledger blockchain to share cross-border trade information, and I'm told U.S. Customs is now beginning to work with KEYNOTE. My personal goal: how do we align the U.S. government in an effort to more expansively implement blockchain technology, beginning in the Western Hemisphere, but expanding beyond, with the goal to combat illicit finance, and with this to address multiple aspects of the terror criminal threat network. Now, let's emphasize, the private sector will have to be part of the solution, and this is what KEYNOTE is doing. Indeed, the private sector is already investing in blockchain technology. Examples include IBM working with the international shipping conglomerate Maersk, as well as with Walmart to again track shipping and to bring transparency to supply chain. Now, the advantages for the private sector is that current paper-based trade system is highly inefficient, costly, and increases the risk of fraud. Now, my goal, and I hope the goal of this Congress will end up being, is to prioritize trade-based money laundering as a national security concern. If we do, we can go after the corrupt actors who are currently using it, using illicit trade to fund illicit activities. We will only be effective if we combat threat networks through the cooperation of technical sectors, law enforcement, the intelligence community, private industry, NGOs, partner nations, and citizens. But when we're successful, it begins a virtuous cycle where transnational criminal and terrorist organizations have less money to promote their criminal and terroristic activities. Latin American countries have more tax revenue to provide essential services, not by raising taxes, but by collecting that which is already due, and hopefully decreasing the rate of opioid deaths, and the enterprise of selling deadly drugs is no longer so easily financed. Muchas gracias. I look forward to participating in the trade-based money laundering panel shortly and discussing the issue later.